A few years ago, I thought I was done with religion. I'd walked away, closed the book, I stopped going to church. I visited churches as a tourist or for the occasional wedding, funeral, like a lot of people, I think. And I convinced myself I didn't believe anymore, that I no longer had faith. And honestly, I thought I'd come to terms with that, and I was at peace with that. I've traveled the world and I'd seen all the religions, I'd seen all the hypocrisies, I'd seen all the strange things that become normalized when you're fully within one religion, but when you look out at others, you can see how crazy it looks, how unbelievable it all is. So I just didn't know what to believe. I think like many people, just searching and then kind of giving up. And then COVID hit, and somehow I found myself on this beautiful island of Bali, and I was trapped on the island of Bali. My wife and I had been working there as high school teachers. That's how we got to travel the world, moving from place to place and teaching. And when COVID hit, we weren't allowed to leave, and if we did leave, we might not be able to get back. And even if we could get back, we had to quarantine in Jakarta for 2 weeks, and so it was just a huge ordeal. But when I went through COVID and the world slowed down, I was in one of the luckiest persons in the world for the experience that I got to live. I started doing yoga. The gym was closed, so I did yoga. I took long walks early in the morning on empty streets, and I meditated. And through the meditation, because I had so much time to think and sit and contemplate things, I started asking myself all the same old questions, and I started investigating that again. What I want to do is try to explain how religion that I didn't believe in brought me back to my search for faith that I continue on. So one day I came home to my villa, had a nice little 2-bedroom villa with a yard, a gated yard, and a little plunge pool. Beautiful, beautiful flowers, bamboo. And I came home and there were people inside my villa, and they were preparing a temple, and they were preparing a ritual ceremony for the spirits, gods I didn't believe in, on land that I didn't know or feel was sacred. And I began to think, like, why is this moving me more than any church service I went to? What is it about this ceremony that's getting me to think about faith again? What do you do when you're stirred by a faith that's not yours, or when you feel something and you don't even really know what it is? And so this isn't a story about Bali per se. It's a story for anyone who's left their childhood religion behind, but who still hopes that there's something out there, something to find or discover, and is on that quest trying to explain why they still believe something but can't believe anything that really exists. My story is about what you do when you walk away from the faith you grew up in, but you still hope that there's something out there. Okay, so before COVID, Bali, arguably the #1 travel destination on the planet, is listed at the top of everyone's list of places to visit, and it's become overcrowded, but it was loud and kind of loud in the best way. Scooters everywhere, traffic jams everywhere, tourists everywhere, sunburned, going to the beach, going to the bars, going to temples, people laughing, people enjoying themselves, just all the smells and the sights. It's just an amazing place to visit. But then COVID hit, and it stopped, and the island shut down. In those crowded streets, we could get up in the morning and walk to places that would be just jam-packed with cars and tourists, even early in the morning. And we could walk out on the street and walk right down the middle of the street for 5-10 minutes without a single car or motorcycle passing by. And when you started walking the streets of Bali, you started looking around and you started noticing what you hadn't seen before, what you couldn't see before, what you couldn't hear before. You started seeing nature. You started seeing just the local people living their local lives. And after a year and a half of that, before things started picking up again, it was the Bali of lore. It was the Bali that existed, that brought people to Bali originally, but that original Bali had disappeared because of its success. Bali had lost what made Bali special because it was so successful. So the beaches were quiet, the streets empty, no tourists, no traffic, no excitement, but it didn't feel dead. It felt sacred. I started hearing things and seeing things and thinking about things when you hear your own footsteps when you're walking around, when you stop to look at a leaf, to look at a caterpillar, to just engage with nature. It's very special. Locals kept doing the ceremonies. The offerings stayed just the same. The locals hadn't disappeared. The ones who'd always decorated the temples and left the offerings in the streets and in their houses and in the restaurants, all that was still there. But the island was breathing again. And in that stillness, I think I started to breathe again. And it was wonderful. There they were, two strangers at my gate, a man and a woman, calm and wordless, preparing something sacred. They had on the traditional dress of the Balinese for the ceremony. They didn't ask permission. They didn't explain. They just began and worked the flowers and the incense and the coins and the other parts of the offerings, the ringing of the bell, and something in the air made it go quiet as the ceremony was conducted. In every traditional Balinese home, there is a family temple, and it is a sacred space for the daily offerings, prayers. It's the connection to the spirits and the ancestors. A priest comes out, which in this case called a manku, to perform the ceremony like the one here in my yard. And the ritual is known as Melespas, and the purpose is to feed the spirits, to placate the spirits, to both boost those who are the ancestors and the good spirits, and also to placate those who might want to cause mischief or harm in the future. And all the time I'm knowing is like, are these spirits real? What is going on? Because spirits are literally everywhere in Bali. At the front door, the back door, throughout the house, in the corner while you're sleeping, in your swimming pool, any place you can imagine. They're just part of the daily life. They're ubiquitous. They're on the highways. They follow you on your motorbike while you go down the highway. I think the Balinese, certainly the most spiritual people I've ever met, and probably the most spiritual in the world. And these temples exist obviously for the spirits, these lesser deities, as well as the ancestors. And that's why it's so important to nurture them. This is rooted in Balinese Hinduism. Let me give just a brief background. Bali is one island, and it is a part of a greater Indonesia. Indonesia itself is the most populated Muslim country, and it is 87% Muslim. And within Indonesia, you have this one smallish island that is actually 87% Hindu. So it's this unique, out of this world experience, and that's what makes it so special, I think. It blends Indian Hinduism, the local animism with the ubiquitous spirits, as well as Buddhism. And these things joined together a couple thousand years ago and have continued to exist in Bali. At the heart of all is the balance between that the humans are balanced with the natural world and with these unseen spirits. In Bali, spirits live in places. Every home, tree, river is alive with the unseen. And these ceremonies don't worship gods the way Western faiths do. They invite harmony between the physical and the spiritual worlds, and they feed the spirits. So the owner of the villa, Pak Tom, he was the only villa and the founder of the school where we worked at. Him and his wife lived next door, Ibu Ruth. In fact, it was their compound that we were on. and he explains one of his philosophies, the alignment of thoughts, words, and actions, which you'll see my wife Michaela identifies as a form of chakra.
Your existence create your own obligation. You have to know. And it is, as they always say, try to put it in one line. What you think, what you talk, and what you live in one line.
Isn't that even like the shot?
After the ceremony, later that evening, there was a special meal prepared, and Paktam and Ibaruth invited us and others into their home. And the centerpiece of this celebration was rice. Rice holds a very special place in the Balinese. Of course, it feeds them. But when they say, have you eaten today, they are literally asking, have you had your rice today? And so we have the rice and then this really beautiful unveiling of the rice as part of the ceremony that we took. Throughout this process, I guess I didn't know what to feel, but I was starting to feel something again, and I knew it wasn't for me, and yet it's done, on my behalf, and that made it strangely intimate. It made it special. I was being introduced to these mysteries I didn't sign up for, I didn't ask for, but maybe I need them, maybe I don't know. I didn't find a God that I could name, didn't find a God that I could worship, but I did find a kind of spiritual gravity, and this gravity that's pulling us towards something, even if we can't quite reach it or don't know what it is. And so I felt it was very special and was so privileged to take part in the ceremony. I thought about that there's a number of ways people can respond when they see something that's completely outside of their realm religiously, and one of the first reactions might just be rejection. This sort of like, that is not real. I reject that. It's threatening. That's against my own faith, and so maybe it's easy to turn away. And you don't want to question your own faith, so you just go, no, that's obviously not real. Second response might be ridicule, and I have to admit, when I first came to Bali and other places, it was this that I took, the imagining the little spirits flitting around behind me, or ooh, there's a spirit, or there's a spirit chasing me down the highway, and kind of making fun of it. And that's not right, and I feel bad about it, but just thinking that's this ridiculous, this is childlike, how can these people believe something so silly? But then you think about other religions in the world and you see silliness in them, and it brings you around eventually to even your own religion, and you think, wait, there's also really unbelievable things that take place there too, and yet why do I accept those and not the other? Sometimes it's easier to laugh than to think too much. It's like a shield. We ridicule, we make fun of it to sort of put up a defense for ourselves. Also, a third reaction, and it's related, but a little bit different, I think, is the reinforcement. We cling to what we do know even stronger. We see something that's foreign, and so rather than opening it up to what might be, maybe being more open, it actually kind of shuts us down more, and we don't want to be challenged, so we just really believe that what we had believed before, that is the ultimate truth, and there is no other answer. Another reaction is actually to embrace, to lean in, to be moved by it, even if you don't know why. Something maybe stirs, maybe it's not in your head, but you feel it in your heart, and you recognize the beauty, you recognize the sincerity of these other people, and the mystery itself is part of the experience, and it sort of opens you up and fascinates you. And I think that's what Bali does to a lot of people. The final reaction, I think, the fifth reaction, is contemplation. And I think eventually that's what came to me. I thought and thought, let me sit with this, let me work with it, let it work on me slowly. Instead of reacting or deciding or judging, just observe. And what seems foreign then maybe becomes more universal. It felt foreign, but now it becomes, more acceptable. And it doesn't mean you're contemplating, it doesn't mean you're converting or believing that necessarily. It's just opening up. But faith is being moved by anything that tries to reach to the divine. Maybe you're watching this because you yourself walked away from a belief system that never quite fit, or a belief system that began to no longer fit. Maybe your kids are asking the questions you once buried, and now you're trying to explain to them and don't have the answers for them. Maybe you still feel the ache for faith, but can't stomach the dogma of any one particular religion. And I don't mean for this story to convert you. I just want to let you know, to remind you that you are not alone in wanting to learn more. And you don't have to go back to your religion, your original religion, although that's acceptable, but you don't have to go back in order to find something else. I believe there are sacred things happening all around us, even if they don't have a name, and we have to open our minds to it. And I think a lot of people see this in a lot of different ways, and I want to continue to explore this as I move on. So, let's see. This bell, Bahoni's spirit chime, was once used to guide souls to the afterlife. I bought it to remind myself that even though I no longer believe in the same way, I still believe in something. Not in their spirits necessarily, but in the pull toward meaning. I'm fascinated about what people are willing to believe. Not because their beliefs are always logical or even comforting, but because they reveal a shared hunger in humanity. Across the world, across time, people reach for something beyond themselves. And that reaching, that longing, gives me faith. Not in any single religion, not in a doctrine, but in belief itself. Faith, I've come to learn, isn't always about gods we can name. Sometimes it's just that we want something more, that we search for something more, and the quiet, stubborn hope that it's still out there waiting to be found.